Hickok 45 here. While we still have the P80, the new remake of the original Glock 17, you know, the P80, the military designated Glock, first Glock that was adopted, and we've been shooting it, we thought before we send it back to Buds, we would just do a little quick overview for you of the 5 generations of Glock pistols, okay? Just kind of an overview. I'll probably leave out some things. You can fill in the gaps for me, you know, that people just have to do that when you have my IQ. But I'll try to hit all the high points, most of them. And, you know, feel free to chime in which Glocks you have, which ones you prefer, which generation is your favorite, maybe. We can argue about which one's the best generation. So, and we have 5. And I'm going to keep them, make sure I keep them in order. This is the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Imagine that. Okay, so when I point to one and I pull one out and shoot it, I'm going to lay it right back where it was. So as you're looking at them, as John is showing the close-ups and not so close-ups or whatever, you know which generation Glock and frame you're looking at. Okay, so anyway, Glock wasn't the first, very first polymer pistol, but they were probably the first to be so successful and so prolific. You know, I think the HK VP70 might have been the first, but no polymer pistol has taken the world to market like the Glock, of course, as we all know. Maybe no pistol has, period, right? So Gas and Glock started making these in around 1980-81, and they were adopted by the Austrian military in 82. They submitted them in 81, I think, and it was a Glock 17, adopted in 82. And then I think Sweden and Denmark soon after that, and they were available in Europe as the Glock 17, but it wasn't until 86 that they came over here to the United States as the Glock 17. Okay, so that's kind of the brief initial you know, standpoint or the perspective on it. All right, and then they have constantly, every few years, changed them a little bit. And unlike some other firearms, they still, I think you can still buy a new, for example, Glock Generation 3. You can still buy a new Glock Generation 4, and of course a Generation 5. So it's a little bit different. Not as easy. They're not making Gen 1s or Gen 2s, I think, for sure, and I'm not sure about the 3s. But anyway, so we're going to look at each one. I'm going to shoot each one, and this old P80 is still dirty. Now it's a new gun, but it's very much like the very first one. Okay, the remake. We have a video on it. You've probably seen it, or maybe not yet. Depends on whether you've looked at it, right? Or whether it's posted yet. But this is their remake of the very first Glock, and it's mostly correct. So we're going to just kind of go through each one and see if they shoot, and just talk about some of the changes that took place. Okay, we'll try not to bore you too much. We got this one, of course, from Buzz. And rambling, let me start with the Generation 1. And again, this is the one that is the remake, but it's very much like it. So let's make sure it shoots, and then I'll tell you a couple of things about it. How about that? You know, it's got the wraparound pebble grip. It has a magazine. Now, the original mags were those, they didn't have much steel in them, and they were not designed to fall freely. They were hard to pull out. I had one or two of those, but now we don't have any of those old magazines, thank goodness. Actually, I probably do somewhere. All right, so let's take a couple shots with it. Make sure it works. All right. Yeah, man, it feels good. Maybe we ought to try to put one on the gong with each of these guns. There we go. I got the last one on him. All right, so that is the, again, the remake of the very first Glock. It's fairly true, very close to, you know, what it really was. And it has some features I'll talk about briefly. Again, before we do that, though, I want to thank Silencer Central out of Sioux Falls, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, great state. But for their support, they're a kind of a one-stop shop for silencers, suppressors. You can call them up, you can go online, and they take care of everything, a trust, the whole 9 yards, and get it approved and comes to your door. So check them out, appreciate their help. Look at this one a little more closely and you'll see what I'm talking about with some of the things, the features. I won't point out everything about it. I mean, you know, I'm not going to describe everything about a Glock, of course, but you may not even know anything about Glocks. But as far as being different maybe from the others and as they started out, you have that wraparound smooth grip. And it is smooth. There's not enough friction. There's really not, you know. It has the one pin up here. Now, some people call this a two pin because you get the pin, you know, at the back of the grip, but I just think of it as the one pin or a two pin. When I say that, I'm talking about the pins up here holding, you know, the trigger and the locking block and all that in, okay? So this was the 17th patent. That's why it's called the Glock 17. It's not because it holds 17 in the magazine, anything like that. It had the old Tenifer finish. This one does not. They couldn't do that. You can't do that in this country, as I understand, because of environmental, you know, regulations, that sort of thing. So you got the one pin. This was made from about 82 to 88. The Gen 1, and they didn't really call it a Gen 1, you know, but it is the first generation of Glocks. Nice finish. It's kind of a great finish. I had one or two of them, maybe three, I don't remember. And it has a small mag release, you know, right there. It has a smooth trigger. See the smooth front of that trigger. And so they got a lot of that right on it, as we talked about in that video. Now, the one thing is a little different. In Europe, they don't put the serial number, you know, on the frame like this. In this country, they have to. It is the gun, the frame, right? And it's even recessed like in the later Glock model. So that part of it is a little different. Of course, no rails as they came out, you know, the very first one. So you might not have seen many of these. You may just have gotten introduced to the Glock pistol recently or firearms in general. And you have no clue what they're talking about when people say Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 1. So maybe this will help a little bit. So you had that smooth, no finger grooves, that pebble grip as they call it. That was kind of useless. And that's the first one, Gen 1. Now they didn't have P80 on them. They were Glock 17s unless it was the military version of it. All right. And that is kind of the key things there. Again, your magazine did not drop. You had no thumb rest. Some of the later models have a little bit of a thumb rest. And of course, that's being very generous to call it a thumb rest. All right, so that's Gen 1. We'll leave it there in the number one spot, okay? Gen 2 came along about 88, so around 1988 until I think about 10 years till 98, 97 or 98, the Gen 2. That's Generation 2, okay? So in that one, they have a captured recoil spring. The first gen just had a guide rod and a spring. And it was actually I don't know what you call it, a round spring, but they started with a kind of a flat wire spring in Generation 2, like even this one has, which is not correct. And I'll take it off real quick, but you know, they went to the captured spring, which this one doesn't have for some reason. That's interesting. Now this is, you know what might have happened? This is Gen 2. It might have been one of those deals where this is John's, and well, it may have been changed out for one thing. Someone may, because a lot of people change out their recoil spring after every, whatever, 4,000 or 5,000 rounds. Or it may have been a transitional thing. You know, I don't know, because you know, I have a AR like that. It's got all these A1 parts and A2 parts mixed together. But by and large, they went to that cut spring and the captured spring on the Gen 2. And also the grip, you know, it's a big difference. You got that pebble on the sides, but they went to kind of a checkering. Again, that's generous to call that checkering. And serrations, that's generous as well, because it's really not much. And I still don't get much of a grip on these. I really don't. I had to work to find 5 Glocks. You know, of course, this one goes back to Bud's. This one's John's that did not have Talon grips on them. And I peeled them off of this Gen 3 gun, which we'll talk about, because I wanted you to see the grip and everything, okay? So before I leave the Gen 2, let's see what else. Like I said, no thumb rest. After the Gen 1, all of them had the drop-free magazines, of course, because they changed the magazines. You know, in this country, we didn't want those. We wanted drop-free magazines. A lot of people compete with them. We're just used to that. But in the military, I understand the Gen 1, they issued these intentionally. You know, they made those magazines that way so they would not drop free. I know back when I had these, I thought, wow, man, when they get their act together and fix these mags. But it was intentional so you wouldn't lose it in the mud, because I read that they issued 1 magazine for the gun. And, you know, so that's the reason for that, okay? They didn't care about our USPSA matches over here in the United States, not one bit, right? So anyway, that's Gen 2. And you notice the pins, you've got, let's see, you've got, one pin here, and you're holding in like the trigger and the locking block in both of these, Gen 1 and Gen 2, okay? And then they came up with the 40 caliber, which was harder on frames, and they went to 2 pins right there to support that better. And you get the Gen 3, you got 2 pins. See, now this happens to be a 10 millimeter, but even on the 9 and the 40, you have, pretty sure on all of them, 2 pins. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, okay? Because they just wanted to make one frame, especially for the 40 and 9, because it's the same frame. So they went to the 2 pin, and that gave it more strength, all right? So now this is the Gen 3. Gen 3 ran from roughly like 1998 to 2010, okay? Another, 12 years or so. So here's where you pick up some things. And the Gen 3 is one of the most popular. Some people still swear by the Gen 3 that it's their favorite. Let us know what you like the most and all these. They all work. They're all incredibly reliable. But you notice you got rails on the Gen 3. You pick that up. They're Glock proprietary rails. And you've got the finger grooves, oh wow, on the grip. And a lot of people don't like those. Some do, some don't. Just personal preference. And you've got this wonderful thumb rest. Oh no, where your thumb rests, I don't know. Maybe it does a little bit. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. They also changed the extractor. You notice you've got a flat extractor on the Gen 1 and 2. And then they went to one where it fits in all of them, but you can change them out and interchange them. But you can feel it when there's a round in the chamber. It protrudes a little bit. Even the others protrude. I could tell if it's got a loaded chamber even on the others. But so that was a big switch. Let's see what else. You had the rail, extractor, loaded chamber indicator kind of thing. You got the 2 pins. You got the ambi mag release. It will. You can switch it over to either side, okay, on the Gen 3. And you notice on these they didn't put Gen 3 or anything on the slide. They just are what they are. Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3. When you get to Gen 4, they start putting it out on the slide, just so you know, okay? And they changed the finishes on them. The serrations, are better on some of the others. Let's go back to this Gen 2 briefly. This is still back. I think they were still using on at least some of the Gen 2s, maybe all of them, the Tennifer finish. And I just always liked that finish because you got a really good grip, and they're good shooters. And you know what? I didn't shoot this one, by the way. So we got to test the Gen 2, make sure it works. Let's shoot something. Let's put it around the chamber first. Gotta get used to the trigger on all of them. Let's try the gong with this one. There we go. This one is John's. It has a bad trigger, I have to say. That's another difference than some of the early models had a really mushy trigger. Just really bad. A lot of people think they're still really bad. But I always liked with the early ones, and this remake is good too, with the Tennifer finish, the gray. You got better friction on the serrations, okay? And somewhere in the 3rd generations when they started messing with that finish, and this one is just too slick. It's okay, but I don't like it as well, okay? Because these Gen 3s were made, a lot of them in the early 2000s is when I noticed the slides were too slick. Serrations were just not enough friction, and I traded a couple off for that very reason. But anyway, so we're just finishing up Gen 3. So I think I went over pretty much the rails, the pins, the 2 pins. You still have the captured spring. It's a very popular gun because you do have, a lot of people like the finger grooves, and this one still has a smooth trigger. You see some variations in that, and of course you got your rails and all that. It's just a nice pistol. Not a lot to argue with. And this one happens to be a 10 millimeter because it was the only Gen 3 that I had. Let's find some 10, make sure it works. Oh no, I got to switch from 9 millimeter to 10. Let's shoot the paper target. Let's smoke the pot. see if I can hit the gong. Yeah, with the last round. So whatever the caliber, they tend to work, as you know. So the Gen 3 is nice. So let us know what you think of the Generations. That might be your favorite. You notice too, again, keep them in order. If you'll notice the mag releases, how they change through the ages. They're very small on the first two Generations, and they protrude a little bit more, the third, and then they change the shape dramatically, you could say, on the fourth generation and the fifth. You just want to know one of the differences, right? Okay. All right, so let's not keep you all day. Let's move on to the fourth generation, which ran generally from what, 2010 to about 2017, and it'll still be made, of course. So then you get into removable back straps, where you can, you've got three sizes generally. I usually use the medium, but and then they have some that come with the firearm that also have a bigger beaver tail, which I have on my Gen 4 10mm. I usually don't use those though. So you got the removable back straps. That was a big change. Gen 4 was a big year too. They went to, just a different texture on the grip. They finally got the texture to where it's not too bad. I still tend to put grips on them, wrap them up with Talon grips or something, because I like that better. But that's a much better grip than they had up until then. It's actually something that gives you a little friction. Okay. They went to a different, it's 2 pins still, of course. They went to a embedded recoil. I'll show you if you're not familiar with that. Embedded recoil spring, and you see that, and it's and it required changing the slide even. So the slides from the Gen 4 will not interchange with any of the previous generations, or even the Gen 5, I don't think. So yeah, I don't think it'll even change with the Gen 5. So that was a big change. Okay, and it gave you a little more recoil absorption, which not all that important for a 9, but for a 40 or a 357 SIG, it's pretty nice. 10mm, some of the others. So Gen 4, the biggest thing you notice, so the finger grooves, is that texture, which is pretty nice. It really is. And what else on this one? Of course, you still have the new extractor, solid extractor. You still, of course, reverse your mag release and all that, and your rails. And the finish on the Gen 4s, they I don't know, remember when it was. They sort of got away and improved the finish, got away from this really slick finish. I noticed at some point, I think that was during the Gen 4 guns, which is, again, sometime after maybe 2010. And I got to where I like it. So the Gen 4 is my favorite. A lot of people, it's the Gen 3. That's some of the basic differences there. Now you will notice on these, I take a Dremel to the bottom of the trigger guard usually, so that's not the way it comes from the factory. That one's been done, and these have not. But the two have. A lot of mine have done that too. Okay, I didn't do it to John's or to the one from Bud's, of course. All right, so Gen 4, very nice choice. I put night sight. I think I bought this from 10 Outdoors 9. This particular one, in fact. And he was selling it, and I needed another one, right? And I put night sights on it one time. I was at a gun show, just for the heck of that, and that's why it doesn't have stock sights. Okay, so then that brings us to Gen 5, around 2017, and of course till currently. And guess what they did? They went back to no grooves on the grip. People have complained about that enough. They decided to go back to the straight grip. You still got a pretty nice texture on the grip. You still got your back straps, of course, and your big magazine release that's reversible. Now this one is supposedly based on kind of the FBI Glock 17M, and there's a lot of parts in this Gen 5 that are not compatible. In fact, almost nothing is compatible with the earlier generations. All right, so that's something to be aware of, and it makes a difference for a lot of people as to whether they will buy the Gen 5 Glocks or not. I have not taken the leap. Now this one is mine. I bought that one. I wanted a Gen 5, but I don't know. I stick with the Gen 4 generally, because the slides and springs and parts just do not interchange. Let's shoot it. I didn't shoot this one, did I? Forgot. I was going to shoot each one. Okay, this is the last one. we got some 2 liters need to be addressed. All right, we gonged it. Okay, shoots just fine. Imagine that, like all of them. Here's something I don't like about it. Try to keep some of my opinions out, but is the mag well. They changed that. You got a mag well. Supposedly makes it easier to get the mag in. Well, they usually do, but I don't like it on the sides like that. I tend to, when I'm unloading it, if I have a mag that wants to hang up or something, here's the way I grab it, from the sides, and that, just don't like that. I don't want to have to go up here on the front. Okay, so that's a negative for me, but you got the mag well. Okay, and like I say, most of the parts are just not compatible with the others, and I think this is when they started that new finish in DLC or whatever, you know, on the on this gun. Okay, and it's okay. You get a little friction with it, but I'm not crazy about it. You got the beveled front of the magazine. That's kind of nice. I do like that. That's a real plus. I wish they had started doing that from the very beginning. That's pretty cool. Very, very cool. In fact, what else? Oh yeah, you got the barrel on this new one is supposed to be, what do they call it, the Glock something MB, whatever. It's supposed to be more accurate. They have, I think it's a combination of the polygonal rifling and standard cut rifling. It's some combination of that that's supposed to be you know, better and more accurate. And I think you can more easily use cast bullets if you want to. I'm not sure if it's advisable, but it's more of a normal barrel, kind of a combination. It's supposed to be very accurate in terms of the barrel, inherently, okay? Now, you're not going to be able to tell any difference amongst any of these in terms of accuracy, standing and shooting. See our video called Accuracy. But you got the same U sights on all of them that they come with. Some do come with, of course, night sights. I could talk about these all night, and I don't want to, you know, take the 3 hours doing it. But I think those are some of the basics that I wanted to point out. I still have them in order, I think. Gen 1 through 5. Now, Gen 5 is, it seems like that just came out yesterday, but it's been 2017. So many of you have the Gen 5, and they're not available in all models yet, but I don't guess. But, you know, tell us what you think about them. Yeah, I'm partial, as I said, to Gen 4. No problem with Gen 3s, but I kind of like that new spring system. It does absorb, I think, a little more of the felt recoil. I just like the feel of it. And they had to tweak that a little bit initially, but I like that myself, and the features of the Gen 4, and where a lot of the parts are compatible backwards, except for the slide and spring. So you have to decide. You find an old used Glock, then you have to decide, you know, what generation is it? Does it make sense, and why is it priced the way it is? If you're in California, I think you can't even buy a Gen 5 or maybe even a Gen 4. I don't think it's on the list. So those are the generations right now, 1 through 5, and that's just a quick overview. And you can, you know, look up all the details on each one and see all the minute differences. I know, for example, they improved. I didn't say it. They improved the striker block safety, you know, on the Gen 5. They say it's an improvement. It's a little bit different shape. It's not round, you know. So lots of little things like that were tweaked, you know, through the years and the generations. It's hard to believe it's been that long now already. But time for some changes, and they've made a few. And a lot of people say no innovation. Well, they kind of take the same design and just try to improve on it. The Gen 5 is supposed to be incredibly reliable, and it's supposed to reflect a lot of improvements, actually, you know, internally in the slide and everything. I'll take their word for it. It probably is, but, you know, where it's kind of a different Glock and not compatible. So many of the parts are not compatible with the others. And I don't like the magwell. I tend to steer away from it for now. Who knows? In a year, I might decide it's my favorite Glock. So anyway, more than some of you want to know about Glocks, because you hate them, right? But there's some pretty reputable people use them and swear by them, like Navy SEALs and folks like that. And when a Navy SEAL calls me and tells me that, yeah, I've been carrying a Glock 19 now for a few years and they just don't work well, that will have some credibility, but not your average mall ninja, okay? So anyway, I'll shut up, and I appreciate you coming by, and I hope this has been some help to you and it hasn't just confused you further. I know John got some good camera work and shots of them, and they are lined up 1 through 5. So if nothing else, you got to turn the sound off and just look at what he was showing you, maybe. Okay, so we appreciate you supporting the people that support us, and we'll see you later. I mean it, we will. Life is good.
Tired. It's a long walk from where I had to shoot that. Oh man. Oh hey, didn't see you guys there. Since you're here, I want to let you know about our friends over at Talon Grips and Ballistol. TalonGunGrips.com. Check out everything they have over there. You can get lots of different grips, the stick-on grip textures for your handguns and rifle grips, so go check them out. Also Ballistol, they're a firearms lubricant or anything else you might need lubricating. It's water soluble and non-toxic. Been using it on the compound and cleaning all of our guns. It's a cleaner and a lube for over 10 years. So Ballistol, Talon Grips, definitely check both of those companies out. And also, while you're on the internet, don't forget to go to hickok45.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Hickok45, Twitter, Hickok45, Instagram, The Real Hickok45, and also I have an Instagram page where I post behind the scenes stuff and different things like that. John, JOHN_HICKOK45 on Instagram. And the next thing you have to do is watch more videos.